Well, thank you for attending the Newcastle Grammar School Young Alumni LinkedIn event. At Newcastle Grammar, we're really keen on seeing our students continue to connect beyond school. And we're providing this service so that you can choose Newcastle Grammar as your school, but also to connect with the broad network across the world where our alumni continue to grow and move to. So we're really excited to have Simone join us today to give you a few tips to get the most out of your LinkedIn profile. So thank you, Simone, for being with us today, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Lucinda. Okay, so today what we're running through is LinkedIn as a really useful tool for building robust professional networks that will help you succeed, which might not feel critically important as a young alumni right this second, but the further you get into your career, the more important those connections and networks are going to be that you create today, tomorrow, and into the future. So that's going to be very important. So today's session, we're going to run through a little bit about optimizing your profile, connection strategies, how to actually use the search functionality within LinkedIn to find the people that you want to connect to and start building those relationships, different privacy settings that you might need to be across, social proofing, and how to build a Google-friendly profile so that you get found for the right reasons. A little bit first about the Australian landscape, because I think it's beneficial to look at those things too. So currently there are 12.75 million active users on LinkedIn in Australia. So that's 48.7% of our population. So it stands to reason that the people, the decision makers that you need to talk to in business are going to be on the platform and available in a way that they're not necessarily available when you just send people an email. So 57% of users use their LinkedIn on their mobile phones and often out of business hours. So again, it's another opportunity to perhaps engage with people, at different times of day when they're more open to having those conversations. And around 47% of LinkedIn article readers are in those upper level positions. And so what this means is, one of the things that you need to consider as you're building out your LinkedIn profile and starting to connect with people is what types of content are you sharing on the profile? And likewise, are you actually generating articles or content yourself that's positioning you, as a person of interest within the industries or the professions that you are entering? So around 80% of LinkedIn users are decision makers in their business. So again, there's another really great opportunity here for you to stand out from the crowd by putting yourself in front of those people who are making those hiring decisions or vetoing different hiring positions. So typically, there are usually about 5 decision makers in business when it comes to buying decisions, but also when it comes to hiring staff, approving internship and graduate internship programs. All of those things become relevant as well. So LinkedIn is very much your profile for career progression. And it's important, therefore, that, we have you set up for success before you start trying to connect with people. It's a high interest and high engagement platform. So it's really all about social selling. It's the place where people make the greatest number of mistakes. And that's because they leap straight to premature solicitation in terms of asking for what they want before they have the relationship and the points in the bank to be able to ask for what you want. So it is an evolving process. It's very important that you don't mistake the tool for the solution. So LinkedIn, like many other platforms, is just a tool that you can use to build the networks that you want and to find the people that you need to connect to, but you still have to apply old school relationship building skills in order to use it successfully. So one of the first things that you can do is work out how well you're using the platform to start off with. So a really good thing to do before you start editing anything is to check your social selling score. Okay, because it gives you a definite point to work from. So you can use the URL that's in the slides here, or alternatively, what you do is you sign into LinkedIn and then open a second tab on your computer and Google Social Selling Index for LinkedIn. And then from there, you can click get your score for free, and it will give you a screen not dissimilar to the screenshot that I've got on the right-hand side. So the social selling index is a bit of a vanity metric in that it doesn't tell you, what a great person you are in your industry, but it does tell you how well you're using this platform. Okay, and there are 4 components to your score, which I'm going to run you through now. Okay, so the first component, and the one that you have the most influence over, is establishing your professional brand. So this is really where you've completed your your profile with the customer in mind, or in this case, with the networks in mind that you are trying to attract and move within and through. Okay, so you can become a thought leader here by publishing meaningful posts, and it's very much about positioning yourself in a way that is authentic to who you are, plays to your strengths, but also fosters and creates interest in you with the people that you're looking to either be employed by or to build those networks with. The second aspect of the score is finding the right people. So this is a harder number. It's much more indicative of how well you're using the tools at your disposal. It's really about identifying better prospects in less time using efficient search and research tools, which I'm going to step you through a little bit later. And it becomes important because again, the more people that you're connected to, the more people that are only one step away from being connected to you. So the bigger your networks are, the more additional networks that you have access to on the platform. And over time, those networks then pay dividends when you do actually have a need for someone to solve a problem or a challenge or to open a door for you. You also want to be making sure that you're engaging with insights. So this score is based on whether you're saying the right things and being seen in the right places on the platform itself. So this is about discovering and sharing conversation-worthy updates to create and grow relationships. Now, they may be updates from your local Chamber of Commerce. They may be updates, from thought leaders within the industries that you are working within or studying within. And again, it's about positioning yourself as somebody who is across what's happening in the industry that you're looking to enter for the right reasons. And then we get to building relationships. So this is about whether you're sharing your network's content and connecting with the decision makers in a business. So you strengthen your network by finding and establishing trust with the decision makers. So for example, if let's say that you have a company that down the track you think you would like to work within, then now's a really good time to actually start looking at who works in that company and has a LinkedIn profile and who you can connect with, so that you have those relationships before you need access to them. So the biggest mistake that people make in building their strategic networks is that they don't actually apply any strategy to it. And then they get to a point where they want something from that network, but they don't have the points in the bank to make the withdrawal. So let's start by making sure that we're dressed for the occasion, because this is, obviously pretty important. So your photo matters. It takes less than 0.2 of a second for an online visitor to form a first opinion of your personal brand. And it takes just another 2.6 seconds for us to focus our eye in a way that reinforces that first impression. So making sure that you have a good, corporate headshot, a professional photo that's taken that's not a bathroom selfie necessarily, and it isn't, a family photo where you've cropped yourself out because you liked the way you looked in that photo. We really need to make sure that it's, again, positioning you in the best light. So eye obstruction can cause issues around this. So apparently eye blockage from sunglasses can significantly harm the first impression that you make. Okay, so eye obstruction via hair and glare and shadow don't make a difference to likability, but it does bring down the perception of competence and influence. So again, you really need to consider the lighting. Squinching is another thing that studies have revealed has a positive impact. So the gist of the concept is this: wide open eyes commonly denote fear to your reptilian brains, whereas slightly squinted eyes portray comfort and confidence. So as a consequence, squinching eyes give you a gain for competence and for likability, when you're first building your networks, it's also important to consider that the thing that is most important to achieve is likability first on an online platform. So once we've got to likability, we're more likely to get the face-to-face conversation. It's in the face-to-face conversations that you can demonstrate your competence and your influence over time. The other thing that's quite important with your corporate photo is a defined jawline. Okay, so accentuating one's jawline is important because it ups your score for competence and for likability and for influence. Okay, so all of these things are beneficial. And lastly, your smile. So a smile with teeth gains an average of plus 0.33% for competence, 1.35 for likability, and 0.22 for influence. So a closed mouth smile has half the effect. So what we want is a slightly open mouth smile with some teeth, but not American stock photo teeth. So, you know, like those photos that you see of, you know, dentists or people smiling at dentists. We're trying to avoid that. We're going for something in the middle. Okay, the next thing that you need to consider is how good is your headline. Okay, so if you're a relatively new alumni, you're probably off studying at university or doing something else interesting, you want to get away from using the word student if you can avoid it. Okay, so you might want to use alumni and the school name, you know, if you just finished year 12 last year, or likewise, if you're in the middle of a degree, then put the area of specialization like Skylar has here. Okay, and then the fact that you're an undergraduate, okay, because it just positions you further along your professional journey than just exiting out of school. So it's all about the perception that you create. You also want to make sure that your contact details are up to date, okay? So this is particularly important when job seeking, although for year 12s, I would currently leave the phone number blank purely for privacy and security reasons. But once you're getting into the job market, you want to make sure that you're contactable. You also want to make sure that the email address that you've used for your LinkedIn account is one that is professional. So if you don't have a work email address necessarily, make sure that it's reasonably straightforward. If you're using Gmail or something like that, that it's just your first and your last name, if at all possible. Because what you're trying to do, again, is consider what someone looking to hire you or to offer you an internship placement or the like, what they're going to think when they read what your email address is. Okay, likewise, I would think twice in the beginning of your career in sharing your different social media accounts or instant messenger. You don't necessarily need all of that there. You certainly wouldn't put your address on there unless you're already working in an environment, at which point you would have the office address. Okay, so if you're already in paid employment in the industry that you're looking to work within, then instead of the mobile phone number, you may well have the office phone number there as well. Okay, then you get to your about section on LinkedIn. So your about section is really about how good you are at telling a story to create interest. Okay, it serves a purpose in that it's meant to cultivate interest and start a conversation. Okay, so some of the things to consider when you're writing your about section are, what are your key strengths that you would bring to an organization? And what previous experience do you have that would be advantageous? The other thing is, under the guise of keywords, under the guise of specialities, you would put a whole heap of keywords that talk about the things that you bring to the table that you want to teach LinkedIn search to show your profile for. So these might be skills, you know, that are specific to an industry, or they could just be your strengths, you know, character strengths and otherwise that are going to be beneficial and that an employer would be interested in, or a mentor, same. Then you get to your experience. Okay, so your experience, each position and summary on your experience is indexable by Google. So generally speaking, you will put your job title that you hold, okay, and then some keywords again on the back end of that, just to be really clear. Okay, so by tracing your current role back to where you started, you begin to reveal those critical experiences that shaped your current strengths, weaknesses, and perspective. So when looking for past experiences or jobs to reference, remember the importance of context. So, you know, as young alumni, one of the things that you'll consider is you're just entering into the professional workforce. So it's important that you shape your profiles in a way that demonstrate consistency. So if you've held a job for a couple of years, that's going to be of interest. If you've participated within organisations on key projects, that's also going to be important. So for me, at 47, and having had many careers, I list all of the jobs I've had up until my first management position many years ago, because that's still relevant to clients today. But what I talk about is not what I did within the role, but that I had a proven track record in change management, people and culture, because that is the most important aspect of what that first management role was. Okay, if I was pitching to McDonald's tomorrow, then you can guarantee that it would appear on there that I worked at McDonald's for 3 years, because I did. And likewise, if I was pitching into a retail company, I would put on there that I worked at Kmart as a checkout operator, because it's relevant, because then it shows lived experience of the industry that you're trying to enter into. So context is everything when you consider these things. Then we move on to your skills. So skills is training LinkedIn search to serve you up to people looking for your kind of human, but also it's training LinkedIn search to find the kind of people that you might want to engage with. So most LinkedIn users have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Most LinkedIn users have been endorsed for something they don't do by someone they've never met. So we don't use this to decide whether you're actually any good at any of the skills that you've put on there. But again, this is where you would load up your keywords. So you're creating a layered profile that's going to get you found for the types of jobs and things that you want to partake in. Okay. Then we move on to licenses and certifications. So licenses and certifications are otherwise known as trust indicators. Okay, so any certifications you hold are going to be relevant here to flesh out your profile and to show some depth of interest and involvement. So, consider, do you have any coaching certifications? Have you done any extracurricular studies which might be relevant or of interest? Or if you are doing some, non-university related study around, online courses and the like, that's where you would share those kinds of credentials as well. And all of those things are going to be reasonably beneficial. Okay. Then we move on to accomplishments. So accomplishments are there mostly to impress the C-type and the I-type personalities on the DISC profile. Okay, and so what I mean by that is with DISC profiling, there are 4 dominant personality types. Okay, so you have the high Ds, who are bullet point people. They want to know what you bring to the table. Can you solve their problem? When can you start? There are the high Is, who I like to call the bright, shiny object people. So I'm a high D, high I, 50-50 split. So bright, shiny object people are very easily distracted, but they meet people and very quickly everyone's their friend. They're very good connectors. So you need some high Ds and some high Is in your wider network. Then you have the S-type personalities, who are really slow to trust but form very deep relationships. They like to know who you are as a person, what values are important to you. And so over time, they like to get to know everything about you, and they're very good. They like the small talk. What did you do on the weekend? How's the family? All of those kinds of things. And then you have the C-type personalities, who are the bullet point, the research-driven people. So these are the people who read the entire Apple user agreement before they click yes. And they're very interested in methodical, they'll write down all of their questions. They're the ones that like to ask you the really curly questions in an interview. It's also important to understand that you're talking to all 4 of these personality types at the same time. So when you're online and you're building connections, you don't know what the personality type of the person looking at your profile might be. So you need to tick the boxes for all of them in order of tolerance. Okay, so, and what I mean by that is make sure that you start with what you bring to the table, because you're only going to have the high Ds for a very short period of time before they move on. Likewise, the high Is. And then with the Cs and S's, they'll take the time to read through the rest of, the summary and the about section. So take your time to fill out your whole profile so that you can then make sure that you're making the most of it, basically. Okay, then we move on to projects. So projects is a great place to include any special interest projects or community-based initiatives that you've been involved in. And what it does is it shows commitment and involvement to ongoing things. So in your projects, you basically can put your heading in, you can put a bit of an about description, okay, and then you can actually put, you can link back to a website if that's relevant. You can add other team members that were involved in the project. So it's particularly good if you've taken the time to commit to connect with all of your previous classmates, because you never know where they're going to go in the long term. Okay, and then we move on to the connection strategy. So once you've filled in your profile and you've done everything that you need to do there, now we can start connecting to people. And this is particularly powerful because the more, like I said, the more people that you're connected to, the more diverse your networks are, the more likely those networks are able to solve challenges for you, either professionally or personally. Okay, so you want to start off first up with who do you want to talk to and get some real clarity around that. And really, you know, at the stage that you're at in your careers, it's about building the foundations of a strong network that's diverse. Okay, so if we start at the beginning, you know, a really easy way to start building those networks is to start with the school's company, LinkedIn company page. So if you search Newcastle Grammar on LinkedIn, you'll find the school page. Okay, and then from there that you'll see that there's an alumni tab just underneath the follow, visit and more button. So if you click on the alumni tab, okay, then what you're going to end up with is this search bar here where you can actually search. In this case, I've put a start year of 2020 to 2022, so it's recent graduates, and it will bring up all of the recent alumni, but you can actually leave that blank and it will bring up all of the current alumni that are linked to the school. And it's much easier to then reach out and build those connections with people because you have that common ground. And so if I give you an example of that, you know, one of the things that you might want to do is, you know, send a connection request to 5 people you find who have gone off and started in the industry that you're most interested in participating in. Okay, so a sample note that you might add to your invitation is I'm a current student, or sorry, you should say, you know, I'm a recent graduate at Newcastle Grammar, and I'm currently building out my LinkedIn profile. I'd like to connect with you as an alumni as I start to build my professional network. So people are going to be more than happy, you know, to connect with you as someone that's coming out into the business world. It's all about how you position it and the way that you write the request. Okay, your privacy settings are going to be really important too. So I'm going to run through those separately once I finish with the slideshow and I get onto the platform, because it's always easier if you look on the platform itself. Okay, and then the other thing that you need to consider is social proofing. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have a good couple of recommendations on your profile, because again, recommendations are like references. And they tell potential employers or professional connections how you go about, you know, being you in the world. So these can be particularly beneficial in reinforcing the strengths that you've built out in your profile and the way that you've told your story. Okay, so how do we get recommendations? Okay, so the important thing to do often is to ask within 24 hours of doing something spectacular. So if you have put together, you know, you've just finished delivering on a community project or you've done something at school, then what you want to do is give them some idea of what you're looking for, but don't send them a script. So here's a great example of that. So if I go, hi Claire, wondering if you can spare a brief 2 minutes to help me out. I'm just looking for 1 to 2 sentences on how you found the sessions delivered today, whether I adapted delivery in a way that met the different stakeholder groups. Thanks in advance. Cheers, Simone. So what sits behind that is a couple of things. When you ask for a recommendation on LinkedIn, normally what they will do is they will ask for, they'll go, can you recommend me? They'll automatically put that text in there. And in Australia, we don't necessarily want to recommend people. We have this whole thing of tall poppy syndrome. So if you say, can you help me out? What you're doing is you're activating the helping gene. In neuro-linguistic programming, we're programmed to help people. So by asking me to help, I'm more likely to be open to doing what needs to get done. Okay, I've set a time expectation because busy people need to know how much of their time you're asking for. So I've set a brief 2 minutes. Okay, so that's it. So I've asked them to help. I've set a time expectation. And then I say, I'm just looking for 1 to 2 sentences, which means I've also set a length expectation. I've basically said to them, I don't want War and Peace. I just want a couple of sentences. And then I'd give them a little bit of guidance about what I was looking for. Might be, I'm just looking for 1 to 2 sentences on how you found my communication, and my capacity to follow up during the community project that we delivered on, or 1 to 2 sentences about how you found my interpersonal skills when I was dealing, with the school program, whatever it might be. And because you ask for different things each time, what that does ultimately is it develops your profile and fleshes everything out for you, which is what you're looking for. And then we get on to the content question. Okay, so it's not much good having a LinkedIn profile if you're not doing anything with it. That becomes particularly important. Okay, so if we move on to content, there's different types of content that serve different purposes, and it takes all types of content to maintain a robust profile and to grow it over time. Here's some examples of what not to do. So these are real life examples taken from my LinkedIn newsfeed. Okay, LinkedIn isn't Instagram and it's not Facebook, so don't treat it like it is. It's a professional network designed for you to position yourself as thought leaders over time. Okay, so some of the things to consider here, these people are meant to be successful in their field, but they're posting memes, some guy videoing himself talking in a car, which seems to be a thing that business coaches do a lot. And then this other one to the right, or actually probably to your left, is someone slammed their hand in a locker and started playing the guitar. So not relevant to LinkedIn, not building your professionalism in any way, shape or form. The other thing to remember is your entire network can see all of your activity at any time. So if I go to your activity feed, then it's very easy for me to see what you've commented on and what you have liked and engaged with. So you need to consider, am I engaging with things that are building my professional brand online, or am I engaging with things that may detract from that brand? How would a potential employer or mentor see that activity? What kind of judgments would they make on the way through? So these are all things to consider as you go through. Okay, so now that I've terrified you all and told you what not to do, what is it that we actually need to do? What are some of the things that we can do? Start off, have a plan. So ask yourself the question, I suppose, have I connected with my classmates first up? Have I searched up all of my classmates on LinkedIn from the year that I graduated? Because these people are going to go on to do amazing things, as are you. And we never know where we're going to end up. So it's important that we make those connections now, so that over time, as all of our careers progress and change, we're still maintaining that contact. They're still seeing what it is that you're doing. You're still seeing what it is that they're doing, because you never know when you might need that connection. The other question to ask yourself is, have I connected with my family if they are on LinkedIn? Not because you want to post things to keep them up to date necessarily, but because they will have professional networks that they have access to. And so by being connected to them, you start to build out a more robust network. And then finally, the question to ask is, have I connected with local business people that I know? Because those local business people are also going to support you over time, because these people are employers. They also have professional networks that down the track you might want access to. You don't need to access any of them today necessarily, but you're going to want to access them down the track. Okay, and all of those things are going to be important. So where to start? Aim small. If you don't have 100 connections yet, start there. Aim to get 100 connections on LinkedIn and 1 to 2 recommendations. That's a good place to start. And then If you're going to get serious about it, you're starting to work towards 500 plus connections, 4 to 8 recommendations from people, and 1 post a month. So posting something actually onto your newsfeed that's designed to position you in a professional way. Okay. And then from here, I'm just going to get out of this slideshow. Just bear with me 2 seconds. Get into the platform. Let me stop sharing for a minute and then start sharing again. Okay. All right. So now when you get into the platform yourself, okay, and you're trying to navigate around, this is where it becomes quite important. All right. So if we go back to your profile, okay, you can see here, it's a recent corporate headshot of me. I've got a banner photo up there, so it's not just blank white space. I've got a headline in there that makes sense, that's specifically talking to my strengths. And if you need to edit any of this, you click the little pencil over here. Okay, this is where you can actually change out your headline. Okay, as well as looking at everything else in there. And then once you've made the changes you want to change, just save it. So it's basically editing your intro. Okay, all right. So from here, okay, there you can see my activity feed. So like I was saying, you can see all of the things that I have been doing and been up to. All right. And your about section. Now, the important thing to have a look is, see what I was saying about the high Ds is you can only see the first couple sentences. It's only the Cs and the S's that are going to click see more to read all of this extra content. Okay, so again, if there's a section of your profile that you haven't added yet, okay, you just literally go back up to the top and add profile section. All right, and so the most important thing, I suppose, to do to make sure that you can take advantage of the extensive Newcastle Grammar alumni network is if you click into add education, okay, and then you search up the school. So we type in Newcastle Grammar. Okay, and click on the school. You want to make sure you're clicking on the one so that it's got the school logo there. Okay, so from here it would be, you know, secondary school. Or it might be secondary education. And Simone might learn to type one day. Okay, so field of study, you can leave that blank. Your start time and your end time. I wouldn't put your grades in there, but I would put any activities or extracurriculars that you were involved in and a bit of a description, and then click save. And then what that does is it means that you then become part of the alumni network. And Newcastle Grammar in particular has a really impressive alumni network. Just let me fix this. Right. Okay, where a lot of people have gone on to do lots of really interesting things. So again, if I go to alumni and I leave it blank and I scroll back down, okay, you've got people who are creative development partners at Google. You've got, you know, people in finance, lots of people in branding and marketing, you know, head of talent management. There are people in government, you know, and the public sector. So all of these people are people that you can reach out to purely as alumni of the school. And so what that allows you to do is to actually start building a really robust network. And the power of a robust network is that you're usually only one step away. Okay, so being that I'm on a premium account, I can see exactly who's looked at my profile. Okay, and I can see, you know, the types of conversations and things that I'm having with them. And then likewise, putting content out becomes important so that I can then engage with all of these other people who are parts of my network. All right, so let's say that you wanted to work at Picture Partners. Okay, I met a lovely lady from HR there at your Wellbeing for Breakfast morning this morning. Okay, so Picture Partners, if I click through here to the company page, all right, and then I can go, I want to see all 1,400 employees on LinkedIn. Okay, so then I've got a whole heap of people that I can consider whether I want to connect to them, but then I can go to location. Let's see if it will let me do Newcastle. Yeah, so I can say, I just want to talk to people in Newcastle. Okay, so, and then I've got, here are the partners, Pitcher and Partners, who's a fairly large accounting firm who's based in Newcastle. Or if I go back and clear all those filters out and I just type in Newcastle. Yep, so I don't want grammar school, I just want Newcastle. Okay, and then I go to people. All right, it's going to bring up all of the people who are on LinkedIn who have listed Greater Newcastle area as their current location. All right, so you might find some really interesting people, you know, whether it's lecturers at the different universities or whether it's people who are operating in business. They're all going to be great opportunities for you to build those connections and to develop those things. And then eventually you'll get to a point, okay, where what you're really looking at is wanting to be able to post regular content, okay, to see who it is that's reading your content. So if I look at mine, you can see lots of people who are founders, but they're information technology consultants. But if I want to know industries, so who are the industries of the people that I'm talking to? Okay, so for me, I can see that it's marketing and advertising, construction, information technology, and automotive. So then I can start tailoring some of the content to those specific industries and niches that I want to talk to. Okay, and if I change that to the last 90 days, let's see if what it does that's a bit different. Okay, so from here, again, the job titles change out a little bit. Okay, but the industries change as well. Okay, so there's a lot more hospitality and not-for-profit, and that's reflective of what my content focus was, you know, maybe 30 to 60 days ago. So really understanding, you know, what is it that I want to achieve, and then how can LinkedIn support that? So who am I connecting to? How am I making the most of those connections? Likewise, you can see here that I can either post a photo or a video, or I can write an article. Okay, so writing an article is basically, you can have a whole embedded blog post that's around, you know, your interests or things that you have strong opinions on. And it will literally open up this publishing menu, which again is pretty straightforward. So I can create an individual article, or I can add to my newsletter. If I'm going to create an individual article, it's in here. It's just like words. You add a cover image. You can add some hyperlinks. It might be some research. So, you know, a great example, I could write an article on the impact of positive psychology and the strength science in the workplace based on the breakfast that I was at this morning. And then that article then goes out into LinkedIn Pulse and can get found across the board. Okay, so we do that because that again builds your professional profile over time. Okay, and so that's what we're trying to achieve there. So if I go back a couple of steps and I go back to my profile, okay, and then if I go down to my activity feed, okay, so from here, you can see that I currently have 13,000 followers. Now, when you start off, you might not have any followers, but you know that they say the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. And the second best time is today. So it's all about, you know, starting with the end in mind. But by writing these articles, and if I click through to this one, it will give you a good indication. Okay, I can then, if I look at the statistics for that article, okay, in discovery, so that's just like where my article is shown up in different things, there have been 2,400 people who have ended up seeing it that I'm not necessarily connected to. Okay, so again, just be very clear that each and every human being has a unique perspective to offer. And so by feeling comfortable in sharing those perspectives, you will often build, a following of people who really want to engage with your content anyway. And that's really beneficial because you never know, like I said, where somebody's going to end up. So one of my best clients is a gentleman called James Fremantle. And it's actually, and this is him here. So if you look at James, so when I connected to James a long time ago, he was the regional sales manager for Elders. So he sold insurance. That's what he did. Not particularly exciting. But when James sent me a message back in 2017, he was the general manager for Australia for Omnia Specialties. So Omnia Specialties is a really large fertilizer company. That's what they do. So they're a global company out of South Africa, been around for 72 years. And I connected to James back here in, I think in 2007. And over here in 2017, James sent me a message and said, I need to catch up with you. You're that person in my network that does social media. We've been authorised by South Africa to have a presence in the marketplace on digital. And so I need to know how you can help us to do that. So that opened a door for me that I didn't even know that I was building the door to be opened. Okay, so again, important from that perspective. So consider too, if you go to your connections, what you're going to want to do is get into the habit, okay, of reaching out to people and learning more about them. And the other way that you can use that is groups. So if you go into your groups, you can find some different groups of interest to join, which is going to be important as well. I don't know if we have, let's have a look if we have. Okay, so if we search for Newcastle Grammar School, okay, you'll see also all the people who list Newcastle Grammar School in their profiles and see all the profile results. There I am. So I've already done a post today. And then there are other people who are doing posts as well. So you can then, engage with all of those as well. Okay, but what I wanted to look at was groups specifically. And it doesn't look like we have one necessarily. So we might just actually just look at Newcastle in general. Okay. And so you can see that Newcastle University has an alumni group. In fact, they seem to have a couple. There's business school alumni, the Newcastle Business Club. So that's basically all of the different, businesses in Newcastle. All right, so that's going to be beneficial at some point. So it's really just about getting to know the platform and exploring it so that you can make the most out of the platform and what it's doing for you at any given time, so that we can, again, build those networks, because you just never know who you're ultimately going to want to connect with. So again, if I look at it from the perspective of people, okay, bearing in mind that I'm from Adelaide and only flew in yesterday and I've never been to Newcastle before. So if I go to my connections, okay, but I can still see that I've got a reasonable number of connections here in Newcastle. Okay, and again, that comes from just being that person that is always interested in and happy to build a robust network. So if I was spending a bit more time in Newcastle, then I would reach out to some of these people and catch up for lunch and have some conversations and build that relationship over time. Okay, so just consider all of those things when you're using the platform. Now, the other thing that I said I would run through for you is privacy and security settings, because they're both very important. So when you're looking to set up your LinkedIn profile and you want to make the most of what you're doing, if you click on your head over here where it says me, okay, and then click on settings and privacy, this is where you're going to edit those settings. Okay, and there are a couple of different things to consider. So under profile information, Okay, so you can see that's where you can edit, add your pronouns or anything else that you might want to do. And if we go back into settings and privacy again. Okay, so you can change your display settings, which is already always nice. You've got site preferences there around your autoplay, showing profile photos. Okay, so in the showing profile photos, again, you can have it so that it's just your connections that see your photo. Your network is your first and your second degree connections. I have it set that all LinkedIn members can see it because, you know, again, if you go back to those first couple of slides and the 0.2 of a second, I want people to be able to get a feeling for who I am based on my photo. Okay. Likewise, if you go to your security, okay, so this is where you turn on your 2-step verification so that people can't hack your account. Okay, so we have more and more phishing attempts online, so it's going to be really important that you make sure that people aren't then hacking your account or doing something with it. Okay, so in here is where you turn it on. Mine's linked to my phone number. Okay, but you can change that verification method to email or to something else. It's also where you change your password if you need to. Okay. And visibility is the other one that you might want to consider. Okay, so profile viewing options, you can have it set so that you're in private mode. Okay, so only some of your profile characteristics are shown. You can also, this is where you edit your public profile. So this is what people can see when they're not logged into LinkedIn. So if they just have come across your profile by clicking on a link. Okay, so from here you can edit your content. Okay, so and just choose which bits and pieces you want visible or not visible. All right, so again, working through all of these settings and familiarizing yourself with the platform is great. Because then once you've got all of that down packed, you can pick and choose different companies or otherwise to start connecting with. So in the scheme of things, the best thing that you can always do is start with a plan. So if you had a strong network, what would that look like down the track? You know, for me, as someone who's had, I think now 12 different careers, when I first exited my first big corporate job where I'd worked for Australian Leisure and Hospitality Group for a number of years, I thought I had a network, but I didn't actually have a network. I had the network that was attached to the job that I did. And so one of the most valuable lessons that I learned was that I actually needed to form a strong network for myself. It didn't matter which job or career I was in, the network came with me. And LinkedIn is a really valuable tool to allow you to do that. So what I would absolutely recommend you do is consider who are the people that you look up to or the mentors that you would like to have around you, and start connecting with those people when you are on LinkedIn so that you get access to the content that they're sharing and the wisdom that they have. But also over time, you'll get to a point where you can ask them for advice. So some of the best advice I've been given and relationships that I have now in business are ones that started by just connecting on LinkedIn and engaging with each other's content. So over time, what you want to be doing is just really capitalizing on those opportunities so that you eventually get to a point where, like me, you know, I have whatever that says down there when I'm not wearing my glasses, so 13,000 followers. Okay, and I have it set so that people can't see how many connections I have. But, you know, if you go back to your network up here, so I have 12,000 connections and 13,000 people who are following me. And that means that when I post content, when I have something to say, I'm reaching a really wide ranging group of people. And quite often I will use LinkedIn and I'll say, does anyone on LinkedIn know the best person for me to talk to about X? Or if I was putting together a panel of not-for-profit marketers to talk about fundraising, who should be on my panel? And my wider networks will give me those answers. So again, just spend the time, have a play around with the platform, but remember that it's a professional setting. In closing, you just need to consider, for argument's sake, if you're starting off, if there were 5 people that I could connect to tomorrow that would make my life interesting, who would they be? And start by having a look at their profiles. So if I look at Ivan Meisner as an example, even though I know I'm already connected to him. So Ivan Meisner is the founder of BNI International. He's a New York Times best-selling author. Pretty cool. But, you know, I'm connected to him because I'm interested in his approach to relationship building. And so he shares a lot of really good content, which, if we go back to activity, shares a lot of really good articles about who's in your room and how you build out your networks effectively. So again, just have a think about who are those people, who are the thought leaders in and around the industries that you're trying to expand into or cement yourselves in, and start connecting with them. On that note, if you have any further questions, you can find me on LinkedIn by all means. But I wish you every success in building the robust professional networks that you need in order to be successful. And I will talk to you all soon. Cheers.